In Sweden's squad for their upcoming World Cup qualifiers, despite not featuring for Newcastle once this season. Hello, welcome to Transfer Talk. What a window it has been already, and with 5 days remaining, we look set for a thrilling end. Alexander Isak hasn't got his move yet, but will it happen? We'll discuss that and plenty more coming for you this hour. A very good afternoon to you at home, and welcome to former Bournemouth defender Charlie Daniels is with us. It's great to have you with us, Charlie.
Thank you, I'm excited. And
our reporter, of course, James. Sorry, you don't get as big a welcome, James. It's great to have you as well.
I'm not playing in the Premier League.
Right, just quick news of a done deal into us. Borussia Dortmund have now completed the loan signing of Chelsea defender Aaron Anselmino. But right, let's start with Newcastle and Alexander Isak, who has been added to Sweden's international squad for their upcoming World Cup qualifiers. Keith Downey is at St James's Park for us. Keith, Alexander Isak met with the club's co-owners on Monday. He's now been called up to the Sweden squad. So where do we stand on this one?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any surprise that Alexander Isak has been called up to the Sweden squad. Yes, we know he has been training on his own for a number of weeks now, but of course he's a Swedish international. They will want to use him in their upcoming matches against Slovenia and Kosovo, and I was expecting that. I think I would have been more surprised had Alexander Isak not been called up to that game. He probably needs a little bit of normality given everything that's going on and has been going on throughout this protracted summer potential sale to Liverpool. But you ask me where we stand with it right now. Look, it's probably the exact same place as where we stood yesterday, because it's one of these situations where for Alexander Isak to move to Liverpool, a certain number of dominoes need to fall, or a certain number of things need to happen to allow that to take place. Look, we know Newcastle are looking for replacements. They've actively been working away in the transfer market all summer long to try and bring in a replacement for Alexander Isak to allow him to leave. They tried for Benjamin Sesko, of course that fell through. They tried for Hugo Ekitike, that fell through, and now they're trying for Wolves' Jørgen Strand Larsen, as well as Brentford's Johan Wissa. So I still feel that if one of these situations, or maybe two of them, get to a point where they're closer about to happen, that may change things regarding Alexander Isak. He had the meeting, you're right, on Monday at his home here in Newcastle, alongside a delegation from the PIF, who of course own Newcastle United, and Jamie Rubin, one of the club's other directors. He had that meeting. I'm told there was no resolution from that meeting. It wasn't like they came out of that and they decided to sign a new contract and carry on with the season. That is not the case. So the stalemate remains, and you have to say, with just 5-6 days left of the transfer window to go, if that stalemate continues, there still is a chance that Alexander Isak could leave Newcastle United by the end of this window for Liverpool. But of course Liverpool have to make a bid that's acceptable to Newcastle, and I would suspect Newcastle need to get in at least one, potentially two replacements, because they are so light in strikers at this moment in time.
Yeah, we'll get into potential replacements in just a second, Keith. Like you say, there's only 5 days to go in the window. Now, even if the clubs could agree a fee, is there time to do it, given we're talking about such a large sum of money?
Yeah, I think there is. Look, I think there is. I think with a situation like this, look, it's been spoken about all summer long, hasn't it? We know the situation. I think Liverpool know what Newcastle are looking for. Newcastle know what they would be looking for a deal to get done. And although it would be a British transfer record, a Premier League transfer record, remember they've already had £110 million plus £7 million in add-ons turned down round about 4 weeks ago. That would have been a record in itself, so that's been turned down. It's going to be more than that. It will be a record, although it's a huge transfer, eye-watering sums of money. I still think, because everything would be okay on Isak's side, I think there'd be no issue with personal terms, for example. I think they could weirdly actually push it through quite quickly. I think the thing that's holding it up is Newcastle's attempts to bring in a replacement or replacements, because the players that they're looking at, their clubs need to bring in replacements. So it's like a domino effect at the moment, and it's the sort of thing where there's a stalemate right now. You know, it feels like we're waiting and we're waiting, but I think it will just take one thing to fall into place for things to move, and we could still see Alexander Isak leave. But, of course, I think all options are open and we could still see Alexander Isak remain here on Tyneside as well. Look, one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating last few days of the transfer window as we tick down to the deadline at 7 p.m. on Monday evening.
Keith, you've mentioned, obviously, potential replacements. Jurgen Strand-Larsen, they're not having much luck agreeing a deal with Wolves as it stands, but feels like this is maybe a replacement for Callum Wilson. And if so, it's a big fee or potential fee for a backup option, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the noises coming out of the football club here at Newcastle, is that he would be a replacement for Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson, of course, left and is yet to be replaced. Of course, Newcastle playing without Isak at the moment, so they don't have a recognised number 9. Anthony Gordon played in that position against Liverpool here on Monday night and got himself sent off. He's missing for the next 3 matches, so they're even more light than they were before. They've just got young William Asula, who of course scored here, and I think will probably be given an opportunity against Leeds at the weekend. In terms of the fee for Jurgen Strand-Larsen, you're right, it's big, isn't it? They've already had one bid on Monday turn down, £50 million, and then they returned to the table last night with a second offer, £55 million for the Norwegian international striker, again turned down by Wolves. I think the player is open to the move, and while he's not agitating to leave like we see with both Isak and Wissa at their respective clubs, I think he would be open to a move here to Newcastle United. But again, I think for Wolves, they want to make sure it's a fee they're acceptable with. They're clearly not happy with 55. They want more than that, and they would need to get a replacement in themselves as well. So look, George Mendes, who works as an advisor for the club, I think furiously working away in the background to try and see if they can bring in a replacement to allow Strand-Larsen to go, but as yet Newcastle haven't agreed a fee either. So it's very similar to the situation with Wissa at Brentford, other than Wissa's refusing to essentially play for Brentford, or has been up until now. But Larsen clearly is playing, scored 2 goals against West Ham United last night, and looks like he's fully committed to the cause. So doing things a bit differently to what we see from both Alexander Isak and Johan Wissa. But again, I do think if 1 or 2 of these dominoes fall, we might see a quick movement in the whole transfer market and things begin to fall into place. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Keith. Right, let's get stuck into this then, Charlie. Just first of all, Alexander Isak, what have you made, as a former player, what have you made of this whole Alexander Isak situation?
Yeah, it's been a big transfer saga throughout the whole summer. I think if the game wasn't on Monday, if Liverpool playing Newcastle later on in the season, I think either a deal would have been done or not done quicker. I think now the game's over and the stuff like that, I think the talks have happened, and now a conclusion will happen obviously before the end of the season now, because there's so many domino effects that happen off this. You say if Newcastle do go in for Strand-Larsen, now Wolves have got to look for a striker as well. So there's so many things in place, but Newcastle I don't think will let him go if there's an offer accepted before getting a striker in. From a player perspective, can you understand? Let's think of from Alexander Isak's perspective and everything he's chosen to do personally and sort of during this summer. Do you understand his frustrations where he's been saying, he's been promised certain things that haven't then happened? So did you understand it from his point of view as well as the other one? Yeah, I mean, there's 2 sides to every story, isn't there? And listen, no one really knows what was said, what wasn't said. But Alexander Isak's fully committed to his priorities and his beliefs and what was said to him. So. If that's the case, that's how he feels, and we can't begrudge someone like that. But as I said, Newcastle are, say, the owners. They control where he can go and can't go. So, and if the talks have gone well and everything gets sorted out, then I'm sure he will go with everyone's best wishes, because he's a fantastic player. But ultimately, Newcastle want him to stay because, say, he is one of the best strikers. If in the Premier League, if not in the world, so why wouldn't you want him to stay? I mean, James, do you see any world in which Alexander Isak now stays at Newcastle? Well, I think if they don't get the money which they feel he's worth and they can't find a replacement, so 2 things really need to happen. Liverpool needs to come in with a bid which Newcastle feel is acceptable. They value him at £150 million. I'm not sure it will necessarily take that, because you've got a very unhappy player, and if he's not willing to play, yes, he's got 3 years on his contract. So Newcastle, from a business point of view, have put themselves in a brilliant position. But ultimately, if the player refuses to play, yes, you can fine him, you can do what you want. But ultimately, the player power is going to win here if Liverpool come in with a suitable offer. But crucially, Newcastle need to find
alternative options. It's just whether or not they'd see signing Wissa and Strand Larsen, if they can get those two deals done, which they don't look close to doing at the moment, and they say, right, we'll take a bit of a profit with the Isak money and we'll go into the season with those two as our frontline strikers, and whether or not they think that is acceptable, because at this moment in time they're not going to sign a Alexander Isak replacement who is world class and who guarantees 20 goals a season, which is what this man has done over the last 2 seasons.
Well, it's interesting actually. Do you think Wissa and Strand Larsen, Charlie, are probably as good as you're going to get for Alexander Isak? Because also, when you look at both their seasons, if you take away Alexander Isak's penalties, they scored a very similar amount, him and Wissa, last season. So when you look at those two that they're going to bring in to replace Isak, is that as good as they're going to get?
I think what the Newcastle are looking for at the end of the window is options. So when they go from September all the way through to January, they need options up the front of the pitch. And like you say, there's goals all around their squad. So Isak's going to be a massive miss, not only for his goals but for his play. But if they can have different options and different people scoring, chipping in with goals, I'm sure they'll be happy with it.
What about Eddie Howe then? As a man that has worked under Eddie Howe, you obviously worked under him for so many years. What's he like as a man manager, just first of all?
You know, he's really good. He's first and foremost, he's a family man. He cares about his players. He understands, he listens, and he wants their best interest in heart. And listen, his biggest asset is developing players and making them better. I mean, you can see from where Newcastle was when he first took over to where they are now, the increase in, I'm sure, in every single player, not only the players that you see, but every single player in the squad, I'm sure, has got better through his work rate. Not only him, but obviously all his staff. And listen, everyone who works with him will say the same thing. So he'll be just want this window ended, knowing him. He just wants everything, wherever Isak stays, Isak goes. If he gets more players, he just wants this window ending, so he knows he's got his squad and he can work with them to the next window. Yeah,
and of course they've got Champions League football as well to look forward to at St James's Park this season. Will this be hurting Eddie Howe? You know, he's had to come out. It's not a situation that's ideal for everyone involved, and having to come out and talk to the media and front up, because he's the only one that really does that. Will he be hurting, do you think?
That's a tough question. I think it's like any manager's role. I mean, he'll be disappointed in probably the way everyone's gone about it. But like I said before, I think he just wants his window to end. He wants his squad together, and then whatever he has, I know he'll work with them to the best of his ability.
It's been a frustrating window, though, James, hasn't it, for Eddie Howe? I mean, he's come out and said that himself.
I mean, it has been frustrating in some senses, but when you look at the goalkeeper department, defensive department, midfield department, they're actually better than they were last season. So you can argue it has been successful on that front. Clearly, right now, they're very short when it comes to strike options, because Anthony Gordon's now out for 3 matches. Callum Wilson's departed and hasn't been replaced. So, in a way, there'll be immense frustration. But in a way, Newcastle fans can also be encouraged that they've been in the market for these type of players. They've been going in for some of the best players. They've been going against the likes of Chelsea and Manchester United. Things haven't gone their way with those deals. But I think Newcastle fans would rather than be going after these players and going after players with slightly lesser ability. So it has been frustrating. But on paper, they actually are in a really good spot. But clearly, strikers the issue.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think if you take the Isak situation out of it, I think they've had a good window in terms of the recruitment they've made. Jacob Ramsey coming in now, they've got an actually really good squad. And I say, if Isak stays, it just makes them even stronger. And if they bring in 2 more players for 1 player, again, their squad gets better. So I agree. If I think they've had a pretty good window if you take the Isak situation out of it.
And just finally, that performance, I know albeit they lost the game in the last second, but that performance will give Newcastle and their fans, such confidence, because, to go 2-0 down and to go down to 10 men and the comeback, it just shows. I remember Newcastle said in their statement, we're a family club, we've got strong traditions, and, they're a proud club, and that performance was everything about Newcastle United.
It was, yeah. It was a full-blooded performance. And it started from before the game, the fans getting on top of it, obviously the occasion with everything surrounding it, but say 11v11, they were on top of Liverpool and gave them a real big scare. And then even when they went down to 10 men, the fight that they showed, the quality that they showed, and the composure that they showed, even though they was down to 10 men, and to get back in it, and it was a lovely goal. Liverpool's winner, really, really good from the youngster, great finish, but. I think Eddie will look at it as a whole and think, you know what, that was a good performance and we're in a good place.
Yeah, can take plenty of positives, but will Alexander Isak be a Newcastle player or a Liverpool player come Monday evening?